China
They
would
should.
prefer China would prefer to have a falling population and all of the terrible things that come along with that. They would prefer to suffer through that as opposed to just essentially importing a bunch of random people from different cultures that don't have their same values. Right?
Well,
China's a
let's.
perfect example. If China wanted the level of immigration that we have, they could easily get it. It would not be difficult for them in any way. And that
Why?
includes
Native
what?
born
I'm sorry?
Americans are useless for the most part. They're lazy, they're entitled, they all think they're princes and princesses. I'd rather have a guy who walked here from Guatemala, left his whole family behind, wakes up every day at 4 a.m. to go to a construction site, work his ass off, and just wants to be left alone and live here. You know, like, good Lord, those guys are worth gold, man.
Well, yeah, I agree that they didn't say, yeah, he has dementia. We're not going to run him because he has dementia. Like that would be ridiculous. I'm saying, like, if you're saying that, like, it's his age and that he's like, I mean, you even just said it just now that he had a lighter workload than he would have had
So
because he was
what?
like,
But so
what do you mean,
what?
so what? It's the most important position in the country. We need someone
It's
who
not.
isn't going to be limited by their age.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, what's going on? How are you?
Doing well. Did you vote for Donald Trump?
I did. You said something probably like 2 or 3 guests ago that kind of, I guess, piqued my interest. You said that I guess you said something to the effect of that most politicians aren't bad people and they're just doing their job. And that could you just kind of elaborate on what you were saying there? Because I don't know, that just piqued my curiosity. But yes, I did vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't even know who most of our lawmakers are. They're just random people who serve, random district in Wisconsin or whatever, and they're just behind the scenes working on legislation and trying to make their constituents' lives better, whether it's on a federal, state, or local level. So I think the vast majority of lawmakers are public servants, people drawn to that to do good, and they just want to improve the world.
Yeah, I guess that just kind of I'm not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with that. It's more just I don't really see how you hold a different opinion of Trump and not of, I would say, I guess, most people in the Democrat establishment. They're like, I mean, I don't think Trump is like God or something like that. I have plenty of criticisms of him. I do think he's in the Epstein files, and I think that's why they're not releasing him. So I'm not going to be up here saying that Trump's like a good person or anything like that. I just think that the majority of people in our political establishment are not necessarily good people. And I think probably the best indicator of this is the fact that the vast majority of our politicians in the federal government take money from AIPAC. And as far as I'm aware, are as loyal to Israel, if not more loyal to Israel than they are to the American people, which I think is as
Well,
good of an indicator as anything that these, so I think just my kind of point in saying that is that I think kind of having this moral argument that, like Trump's less moral than Harris or something like that. As far as the state of the country, that just kind of seems like kind of a silly argument to make, if that makes sense.
Well, I think if you look into APAC money, you'll see that there's some high-profile people that get money, but I'm willing to bet most people don't get money from APAC, and even if they do, it's a couple $1,000s here or there. But there's tons of lobbying groups out there, like the American Beverage Association, the National Association of Realtors, that nobody ever talks about, that are just as impactful as something like APAC. So I never understand why there's so much focus on APAC and not these other lobbying groups that have arguably way more power than AIPAC.
Yeah, so the vast majority of the people in Congress and in the Senate do get money from AIPAC. And I think I can pull up the website if you want to, but I mean it's common, it's public information.
And what's
the
the
vast
average
majority of
amount
people,
that what's the average
Sorry?
amount that AIPAC gives them?
I couldn't tell you what the average amount is off the top of my head. I know that Kamala Harris has, over the course of her career, received $2.5 million from them, though. So, I mean, if we're talking about, yeah, go ahead.
Like I said, there's some high profile people that have received a lot, but there's 535 members of Congress and 6 delegates. So we have to be realistic here and say, okay, so you're telling me that the majority of the 535 members in Congress receive money from AIPAC?
The vast majority, yes. You can count on, last time I checked, I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 to 15 out of those 500 and some that are not associated with AIPAC. Yeah, so it's the vast majority of them.
And that's what I was asking, what's the amount they're getting? Because if it's $5,000, do you think that that's a huge deal?
It depends on the person. I would say if it influences their foreign policy decisions and if they support Israel in ways they would not otherwise support Israel because of that money. I don't care if it's $5 or if it's $5 million. That's corruption and that's bribery.
So
We should know about it. Yeah.
I think there's too much weight put on AIPAC's money in the decision making process. Like, these people are not robots that just do whatever they get money to do. So I'm willing to bet the majority of them, like most Americans, just support Israel. Maybe not the current version with Netanyahu and the craziness that's going on there, but over the years, the vast majority of Americans have supported Israel. And it's not because AIPAC told them to. That's just where the American people are at. And so our leaders are also going to take that position as well.
Even if that, I would, and again, I don't have a study to back this up off the top of my head, but like, I would hazard to guess that the proportion of our Congress that supports Israel is far higher than the proportion of our population that supports Israel, right? And I think you can see the public outcry that's been going on about like Gaza and stuff like that over the past 2 years as a prime example of that. That is not a sentiment that is shared by the vast majority of people in our government. And I mean, to the I guess Democrat side, most of the people in Congress who don't support Israel are actually like pretty far left, right? It's people like Ilhan Omar and like AOC and stuff like that. So credit where credit's due. Like they're kind of doing a good thing in that regard.
Yeah, but there's people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who I don't think take any PAC money, and they passionately support Israel.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you said something like, the people in Congress aren't robots and that they'll kind of make their own decisions regardless of who they get money from. And I think I agree with you that they're not robots, but this kind of goes back to my point of like, if your job is to represent a specific population of people and then an outside organization gives you money to make decisions you would otherwise not make, that's kind of like the definition of not having like a solid like moral foundation, right?
If people say it again.
So if you're a congressman, right, or a senator, or whatever, and your job is to represent the people that live in your area, right? If AIPAC comes along and says, "Hey, here's some money, vote for, to give Israel more aid or to, make this foreign policy decision or whatever," if you are making that decision because AIPAC gave you money and not because the people that you're representing wanted you to, you are corrupt. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, but you have no proof of that. So my point was that most people over time have supported Israel in America. As of recently, that changed because of their actions in Gaza and such. But up until 2023, most people in America support Israel. They can say they didn't in the chat or whatever, but that's the truth. And so our lawmakers reflect that. I mean, aid packages for Israel would pass almost unanimously in Congress. And that's not because of AIPAC money. That's just where the American people are at.
I strongly disagree. And like, I mean, I guess if you just because if this is a point of contention, we can pull up like a poll or something of Americans that support Israel. I mean, like, I don't know what the number would be off the top of my head.
Pull up a post October 7th, 2023 poll, and you'll see that the vast majority of Americans supported Israel. I mean, every vote in Congress is along those lines. There was
just because this does seem like an important point, I'm just going to pull that up really quick. So I'm not
take a look.
I'm not just making numbers up in a second.
I'll read off a dono here while you're doing that. Shane, thanks for the $5 on Venmo, man. I appreciate it. Way to serve those Trump supporters. Everyone, make sure to tip your server. I appreciate it, Shane. That's awesome. Thank you, dude. My other point is that there are other big lobbyist groups that donate even more money than AIPAC, and no one ever talks about them. Like I mentioned, the National Realtors Association, there's Sugar Lobby, all sorts of lobbyist groups out there that you could make an argument have a way more detrimental impact on our lives because they have a direct impact on it as opposed to Israel. And nobody ever talks about them at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, that isn't a good thing. But at the same time, all those organizations you just said, the Sugar Lobby and like the Realtors Association and all that, as far as I'm aware, those are American entities, right? Like that's American politics interact.
But so is AIPAC is an American group as well. These are Americans that are supporting Israel.
At the end of the day, AIPAC comes down to Israel, though. It is a foreign entity. I understand the people.
It's not a foreign entity. It's Americans who want to see Israel get support from their lawmakers.
Here, hold on. I just pulled up the study. So Gallup reports that 46% of Americans express more sympathies for Israelis, while 33% express more sympathy for Palestinians. And I'm assuming that the other
pre 2023.
That's early to mid 2025.
I told you. I said sentiment has changed in the last few years, but historically, our country has overwhelmingly supported Israel. That's why I said bring up something before October 7th.
Yeah, let me find something before October 7th. Hold on. According to a Gallup poll conducted in February 2022, 55% of Americans sympathize more with Israelis than Palestinians. So it's essentially half.
What's the date on that?
February 2022.
February 2022. Okay.
Yeah, so it would have been like 18 months before October 7th.
Well, 55% sounds like a majority to me. I don't know.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's one poll, but I'm sure I could find more polls that show more than that too.
Yeah, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that it's 55% of the American people. So you would expect, at least like if common sense is any indicator, that give or take 55% of Congress probably would support Israel too. Not like over 90%.
Okay. And you attribute that exclusively to AIPAC's money, which is what I have a problem with.
It's not just AIPAC. I mean, there's other groups that are doing the same thing that AIPAC is doing. But yeah, it's corruption that politicians are complicit in on behalf of the Israel lobby, yes.
I just don't see the connection, though. I understand how you're getting there, but you cannot draw a direct line from the AIPAC money to, oh, they support Israel. I know it seems that obvious, but that's not how things work. Like AIPAC basically gives money to everybody to try to win everybody over so that they cover all their bases. That's how I see it. That's why I disagree with you, because I just see AIPAC as hedging their bets. They'll give money to Democrats, Republicans, because they want to make sure whomever's in power has their back. That's how I see it.
I guess, yeah. And I mean, like I said, the reason I brought this up is because I think it's pretty fair to say that if you're a politician and you're taking money from AIPAC in order to make decisions you would otherwise not make, which I understand your point is that that's not necessarily what's going on, and that's fine. I guess the whole point that I'm trying to make is that to make a blanket statement such as most politicians like just do their jobs and aren't like bad people or something like that.
Yes.
That, I mean, yeah, like the fact that they're getting money from an outside thing to do things that potentially wouldn't be in the interest of the people they're like elected to represent, like that doesn't seem like something a good person would do.
But that's being in office. Most of them get money from outside groups.
Yeah, exactly. So we agree.
That doesn't mean they're corrupt. That's just the game. It's expensive to get elected. It's, you got to run ads on TV, and some of these people are in very expensive markets like Pennsylvania, New York, California. Like, this is just the game, man. Like, you got to raise money to win.
Yeah, which I guess just kind of comes back to my point that I think when we're talking, at least when we're talking about federal politics, I think kind of the sort of morality thing where you're trying to find out who's like a better person, like on some sort of like moral level or something, that just kind of like, I think the better way to address it is just issues. Because I could point to, like, for example, I could point to like 10 million things that Kamala Harris has done that I think, are immoral and possibly would imply that she is probably not a good person. But at the end of the day, I mean, the more logical thing to say in that regard is this is why I think Kamala Harris wouldn't do a good job, not this is why I think she's a bad person. And I've watched your live like a few different times, and you seem to attack Trump as a person like pretty often.
Yes.
Yeah, which
but
just
I
kind
check
of
his
seems
policy
like
even more.
Silly.
I really don't talk about Trump as a person much. I talk about his policies.
Yeah, we can talk about his policies. It's just I don't know, and I'm not trying to. I won't quote you verbatim because I didn't write it down. But it was, I don't know. I heard you say something a few guests ago to the effect of that Trump's like a dishonest person, and because of that, like he shouldn't have been president or something like that. Which, like, at the end of the day, I think that the more intelligent thing to do would just be to just stick it to his policies. Which it sounds like you're saying that's what you do, so that's fair.
Well, but it's not just me. Like, this Epstein case is about the elites getting away with everything. When 1% of the country owns 50% of the wealth, people have a perception that the elites are living in a different world and they get away with everything. And that's why the Epstein stuff meant so much to so many people. And now Trump is playing along with that, and he's hiding. He's not revealing what he said he would. And he said he was different, that he would be the most transparent president ever. I mean, he even said it on those Phase 1 documents that were released, or the cover of the Phase 1 documents back in February. The most transparent presidency ever. And here he is now telling people to move on and don't worry about it. It's nothing to see. I think that is a glaring example of why Trump is even worse than anyone else, because he took advantage of people's trust and then he let them down. And I don't think we should ignore that.
Well, yeah, again, if we're talking about taking advantage of people's trust, I mean, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lied to the American people for, I'm pretty sure, over a year, that Biden was fit to hold office, that he didn't have dementia, that he didn't have any of these problems. All for after Trump got shot, for them to come out and say, nope, he actually does have all these problems. No,
nobody has admitted any of that. The only thing is a doctor's note from a physical in February of last year that said Biden is fit for office. There's no evidence that's come out to show that Biden has dementia or was unfit to serve. Nothing. There's been some articles, there's been some books where they claim to talk to people who said that his schedule was lighter than other people due to his age and just working with him. But there's nobody that's come out that's saying he's unfit to serve.
Isn't that literally why they announced that he wasn't going to seek re-election? Was because he was like too old for it?
No, he announced he's not seeking re-election because the polls had lost faith in him. He could not convince the American people that he was still fit for office after having a bad debate performance.
Okay. I mean, as I recall it, and again, you can pull up the quote if you want to. As I recall it, I'm not sure if it was what Biden said or if it was what his press team said, that the reason he was not seeking re-election after he dropped out in July of last year or whatever it was because he's essentially getting old and getting long in the tooth, and that they need someone. No. That's how I remember it. Maybe I'm misquoting, but
yeah, you're totally misremembering it. He put out a letter, I think on July 21st. They never said anything like that.
Well, yeah, I agree that they didn't say, yeah, he has dementia, we're not going to vote him because he has dementia. That would be ridiculous. I'm saying if you're saying that it's his age and that he's I mean, you even just said it just now that he had a lighter workload than he would have had because he was
But so what?
So what? It's the most important position in the country. We need someone who isn't going to be limited by their age.
It's not about being limited. It's about accommodating somebody as they're getting older. It's like getting a wheelchair ramp if someone's in a wheelchair. That's it. He still was capable of doing the job, and his results are what I point to prove it. He did a great job as president. I think he had more in the tank. Obviously, not a lot of people agree with me, but I pay attention to politics on a much more granular level than other people. And I saw what he was doing in the bills he was passing. Most people have no idea what legislation he passed or how he ran circles around the Republicans when they took over the House. None of it. But I saw it, so I was confident he'd be fine. And also, when I vote for a president, I vote for a whole administration. I don't vote for one guy. And Biden proved that he could hire competent people to surround himself with that were very good at their jobs. And look what we got now. We have a bunch of fools who just tell Trump yes on everything and screw everything up.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I mean, we can. Yeah, fair enough. Go ahead.
I point to the facts. We had the best stock market. Our S&P 500 set a record the last 2 years of Biden's administration we hadn't seen since the 90s when Britney Spears was on the radio, on Total Request Live. We had record jobs created, 8 million more jobs than before the pandemic. So we recovered everything from the pandemic plus some. We had a surge in manufacturing. We had infrastructure legislation, $1 trillion worth passed. We had the Inflation Reduction Act, which was paid for itself and was the largest investment in combating climate change. I mean, on and on and on and on.
Yeah, well, I mean, during everything you just said, Biden essentially left the southern border completely open and essentially let whoever wanted to walk in. So all of the economic benefits or whatever you want to talk about, that kind of doesn't really matter if we don't have a basic measure to ensure our national security from just random people who are walking in, right?
And what national security threat did we face because of that?
We're still facing it. We don't know who's in the country right now.
No, because every T attack that's happened since has been by Americans, not by these migrants. So they're no threat to us at all. In fact,
Right,
Our
right.
economy doing well was because Biden had a looser policy with the border. I would argue he didn't let just anyone walk in. He allowed for a lot of people to claim asylum. He created new parole status for some people escaping harm. But Biden met the demand of our economy, which was begging for more people. We had record low unemployment under Biden, 3.4%. We had a stretch below 4% under Biden for 2 years. Remember all the help wanted signs? So he accommodated that by allowing more people in, and they worked their asses off, and Americans prospered because of that. And you're citing a non-existent security threat as a negative. There is no security threat from these people because you've created in your mind an idea that there's a bunch of sleeper cells or something like that. That we face no threat at all from these people.
I never said anything about sleeper cells. It's the threat is that
what else could you imply? What else do you mean then?
Yeah, so the threat is that there's give or take 30 million people in the U.S. right now, in large part due to Democrats not taking action on the border, that we don't know who they are. We don't know what threat they pose. They might not pose any threat at all. I agree with you. They might not pose any threat at all, or they might we don't know who they are. And the idea that we're just going to pretend like it's not an issue because we haven't had any terrorist attack from them yet, it's not that doesn't make any sense. Right.
The number you cited is absurd, and nobody agrees with you except Donald Trump. Even he said a number less than that recently. So it's estimated there were already 11 million people undocumented in this country before Biden took office. Now there's probably another 3-4 million, so it could be upwards of 15 million. That being said, these are people just working, and we could easily find out who they are by having an amnesty program, by allowing them to come out of the shadows, fill out some paperwork, and identify themselves. 99% of them would instantly. Problem solved. But Trump won't do that. He wants to put on a political show by chasing them down in the streets with masked federal officers pretending he's doing something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just got to have an axiomatic difference that I would agree that we did, at least in the time period you're talking about, we did have a demand for unskilled labor that immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, could fill. And that I guess in an immediate sort of scope that did kind of fill a hole that we needed to get filled. That being said, I would much prefer a president to invest in the American people and have incentives for Americans to do those jobs such that we don't need to rely on random people showing up that we don't know. So,
but there is no incentive.
I agree that we kind of value different things. So I'm not necessarily trying to convince you of anything. It's just that the immigration for a lot of people, not just me, is a much bigger deal than you're making it out to be.
But you're halfway in reality, because you said that I guess these people filled a demand for unskilled labor, but we should have a government who incentivizes Americans to do it. There's no incentives to get Americans to do it. There are no Americans to do that work. We have a 4.1% unemployment rate right now. We have 8 million job openings in this country right now. We do not have the manpower to do these jobs. And that's why Trump himself said he's going to come up with a temporary pass for agriculture and hospitality workers. He said himself that there's no way to fix it. So there is nothing to motivate Americans to go cut broccoli in the fields or clean toilets in hotels. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, no, that's not true. The thing is that solving a problem of that scale takes time, and it does involve a temporary economic downturn to it, which is, again, why everyone was freaking out about the tariffs, right? Because the tariffs did, and I'm not talking about what's happening now, but when the tariffs were first announced a couple months ago or whatever it was, people were right in freaking out, saying that products were going to be more expensive and all this stuff, even though the tariffs were aimed at doing exactly what I'm talking about, right? Bringing industry back to America, having more jobs for Americans, and essentially decreasing our reliance on international people moving here or international trade or whatever it is, right? Which I agree that if all you're looking at is the immediate right now, just having importing essentially our lack of workforce, just importing that from other places, that's a temporary solution. I agree with you. It's just that that's not sustainable, and that's not something I think Americans in the long term really want to entertain for a long period of time.
The alternative is not sustainable. You're not addressing my point. We have 4% unemployment, basically, and we have millions of job openings now. And if we lose these immigrants who have come in, nobody's going to do these jobs. Nobody.
But I mean, if we don't change anything, yeah, you're right.
What do you mean change anything? This is a good system. What we should do is create new legal means of immigration, because 99% of these people would not come in illegally. if they had a legal means to come in. And right now, it's very difficult to get into the United States legally. You have to basically marry into a family or be a high skilled worker. And we have a demand. It's not as much now. It's gone down dramatically. That's why you don't see as many people at the southern border. But we have demand for unskilled workers to do a lot of jobs in America. And that's why I brought up the point that even Trump agrees with me that Americans can't do those jobs, nor is there any pool to pull from. And that's why he wants to do a temporary pass for agriculture and hospitality workers. You know, that's like over 1 million people that he's talking about in that category.
Yeah, no, it's a good amount of people. It's just that the problem with that, right, is that if we continue relying on, it doesn't necessarily just have to be undocumented workers. If we keep relying on immigration to fill gaps in our workforce, as opposed to training people to do those jobs here, as opposed to increasing our birth rates, so we don't have to rely on essentially like having an artificial birth rate made of people who aren't from here, right? If we did that, that would be better overall. And like, I agree that like the Trump administration right now is not putting forth an idea of how to increase birth rates or something like that. So that's why, like you just said, right, he's giving amnesty to like 1 million people who are doing jobs we don't want to do. What I'm just saying is that's, go ahead.
You keep saying we'll train people to do it. We don't have the people to train to do it. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, so we need to up our birth rates. Yeah.
Okay, so upping our birth rates would require making life more affordable for people, number one, first and
Not
foremost.
true. No.
Not true. I think the number one reason people aren't having families is they're richer and they don't want to spend the money on having kids. Like, childcare is not affordable. It's like $18,000 a year after taxes to raise a kid. It's like a mortgage payment to put your kid in whatever it's called, childcare. I don't remember.
Yeah, actually, I called into this show about a week ago and we had this exact same conversation. I'm not sure if you remember, but
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you remember when I said that the countries in the world, like exclusively with the highest fertility rates, are countries that don't make a lot of money, right?
And
yeah,
I told you that's because they need extra hands on the farm or whatever to help out.
Yeah, but I'm saying that they don't need it's not like you give a Nigerian person like a higher income and they start having more kids, right? It's not like the decision for people not to have kids isn't an economic thing.
But that's not our situation. That's their situation. Our situation's different.
No, but I'm saying that the idea that people aren't having kids because they don't have enough money to have kids that's just not true. The fertility
it is true.
No, because
in America, it's true.
No,
it may not be true over there in Nigeria, but here in America, it is true.
No, that's not true. So in America, I'm not talking about any other country. In America, the people who tend to have more kids are less wealthy people, right? The people who tend to have the least kids are the most wealthy. So the idea that if you have more money, you're better, off economically, you're going to have more kids. That's just not true.
So you want people to be poorer so they have more kids in America? Is this your argument?
No, of course. I want people to have I want people to be rich and have more kids, but at the end of the day, I want people to have more kids. That's more important than anything else. Because if we can't, if we don't have a sustainable population, literally nothing else matters.
And well, again, you have to make life more affordable if people are going to have kids. Otherwise, your argument is to make people poorer to have kids because they're having more in Nigeria and they have less money than us. I mean, that's literally your argument. What is your argument then to encourage people to have kids, if not to make them poorer?
I mean, among other things, you have to ban abortion first off. That's the number one thing you have to do. But here's the thing, dude, is that even I'm going to play. Oh, wait.
Have you looked into why people have abortions?
99% of abortions are done electively without a medical reason to. So
why?
The reason kind of
why? Why would somebody do that?
I don't care.
You should care, because that is the first step to getting rid of abortions, is to find out why people are having them, right? And there's research out there that shows. But you don't care, so that tells me that you're not serious about this.
Well, I mean, in a sentence, the reason people are having abortions is because they are able to have abortions, right? Because there is a legal framework that people can have abortions without any sort of consequences of it, essentially, right? That's why people are having abortions.
That's not the reason why people do it. Most people would love to have a family and and no matter what age, there's never a good time to have a baby. So I'm sure more people would keep their baby if they could. But if you look into the reasons why people do it, it's economic reasons for the most part. And do you know who the people are that are getting ABs, as we say here on TikTok?
Oh, I can't. Sorry, I didn't know I couldn't say the word. Who's getting ABs?
these are mostly people who already have a kid. There's this idea that it's like teenage girls or college girls having fun on the weekend. And the truth is, it's mostly people who already have a kid and can't afford to have another one.
Well, yeah, and I'm just to play into what you were saying a second ago about at the end of the day, like I would prefer to have a poor population that has a bunch of kids as opposed to a rich population that does not have kids, because a rich population that doesn't have kids is essentially just spelling out the collapse of our country like within a couple generations.
But why?
And, like, you can look at what's happening. You can look at what's happening in China. You can look at what's happening in Japan. Like that is what is happening to those countries. They are incredibly rich countries that cannot sustain their own societies because no one's having kids. Like that's
but
not okay.
You're ignoring this other solution, which is to allow people to come here legally. I'm not encouraging illegal immigration, but like Kamala would have doubled the number of temporary work visas for farm workers if she would have won. So why not just allow the people who want to come here and work hard and have grit and want to make our country better and have a second chance life? Why not give them that option and just bank on that? What's wrong with that?
I support doing that in incredibly limited numbers if there's like a specific industry or like a specific.
But why? Why?
Because I want Americans who are from our culture, have been
there it is,
who grew up here, right? Who have our values, who speak our language, who do all this stuff, right? I would prefer to have those people as opposed to just random fucking people from wherever else that we don't really have an obligation to help, right?
So what's the difference between you, a guy who's, I'm assuming you lived here your whole life and you're steeped in the culture, probably even born here. What's the difference between you and some guy who comes here 2 weeks ago and loves America, loves Trump, stands for all of what America loves? He is free speech, due process, tells people to come here legally. What's the difference between you and that guy?
Among other things, unless that other guy's from like England or like Australia or something. I speak English. So there's that. What does
speaking English have anything to do with it? Most people learn English anyways around the world.
Nah, there's loads of people who've been living here for decades who don't speak English, dude. Like you.
Okay, and they're just as American as you and me. My mom wasn't that great at English. She was just fine, but she wasn't absolutely fluent, and she never bothered to learn further. But she loved this country, and she would fly the American flag on July 4th. Like, what? That's what I'm asking you. What's the difference between you and these people? It's just a matter of language? Language doesn't matter. You can hold our American values and ideals in Spanish or Creole or whatever language you speak. You can be just as passionate about America in another language.
Yeah, but the thing is that we have an entire, I mean, it's primarily the education system, but it's not just the education system. We have an entire system set up so that kids who are born here, right, who live their entire lives here, are educated in our values, know what's up with our culture, know what's right, know what's wrong, know what it means to be an American, right? And again, I agree with you. It's not a 100% guarantee that every kid that comes out of our education system is going to be an upstanding citizen. There's plenty of, right, criminals and serial killers and all sorts of horrible things that come out of our education system. I agree with you. There is a better chance, though, right, that you're going to be well, like, suited to American culture having been brought up here as opposed to having been brought up somewhere else with different values.
I disagree.
That's common sense.
Disagree. No, I disagree, because our culture doesn't mean anything. What is our culture? I think what connects us, what binds us, is standing for the Constitution, the values of America. But what is this culture that you speak of? I don't really see an American culture beyond shitty strip malls and chain restaurants. Like, what is American culture?
It's how we live here. There isn't an exhaustive list of it.
But isn't it the rules of the Constitution? Freedom of the press, freedom of religion, due process, liberty, right? Aren't these the things that define how we live here? And I think that can be upheld by anybody from the second you walk into America. You don't need to be here for years to embody those values.
Not really, because the way that the way that people in America speak with each other, the way, like, the cultural norms we have insofar as like what you're supposed to do in certain situations and stuff like that's not, we don't get that from the Constitution. We get that from the, like, society that we live in, right? It's not like, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying the Constitution doesn't matter or something like that. It's just like that doesn't have much to do with like what American, like, culture is, right?
It has everything to do with it, because all that other stuff is dressing. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. What culture are you talking about? How we deal with each other? That all stems from our values in the Constitution and this American system that we all love and uphold. And anybody can walk into America and instantly have those values and stand for those things. You don't need to be here for a while to get it.
That's not really true, though, because the vast majority of Americans, I've read it once, but the vast majority of Americans, I'm pretty sure, haven't read the Constitution and don't really have that good of an idea of what's in it. And that's okay, because most Americans aren't involved in governance, right? So they don't really need to know what's in it. Like
I
the
agree.
Constitution, like that's valuable insofar as like states' rights and all that stuff, and like what happens when you get arrested, and like I guess like quartering soldiers in your house, and like I mean there's values to the Constitution. I'm not saying the Constitution is worthless. It's just that's not really that important when you're talking about the culture that we have here, right? That doesn't come from the Constitution.
I'm not saying you need to have read the manual in order to be a good citizen. It's the values that we all live by here in America. You can have those without ever reading the Constitution or even know the Constitution exists.
So wait, but you just said that you essentially just said that American values can be boiled down to like the Constitution, right?
What's in the Constitution? I'm not saying you have to have read the Constitution. I've never even read the Constitution from front to back. But most Americans don't know anything about the Constitution, but
exactly,
they live those ideals, those values. And you don't learn that by osmosis by just being in America. You understand why what you stand for, right? And people have an idea of what America is, even from the outside, and they come here to live those values with us.
Yeah, no, and there's plenty of immigrants that do that. I'm just like, given the choice between relying on native-born Americans and relying on people from elsewhere, I would like 10 times out of 10 prefer to invest in Americans, right?
Why?
And that includes
native-born Americans are useless for the most part. They're lazy. They're entitled. They all think they're princes and princesses. I'd rather have a guy who walked here from Guatemala, left his whole family behind, wakes up every day at 4 a.m. to go to a construction site, work his ass off, and just wants to be left alone and live here. You know, like, good Lord, those guys are worth gold, man.
Well, wouldn't you prefer to all of the reasons that you seem to hold Americans in contempt? Wouldn't you want to like address that as opposed to just relying on random fucking people? Because you literally just said yourself that Americans are like stupid and lazy and all this stuff. Wouldn't you want to make them less stupid and less lazy as opposed to just importing a bunch of random fucking people?
Of course, but that's not going to lead to them picking crops. You know what I mean? That's going to lead to them being programmers and running businesses. And that's why we're investing in that, so that Americans can continue to innovate and do those high-end jobs. But we're not going to invest in Americans to go wake up at 4 a.m. and cut broccoli. You know what I mean?
No, you are, because we get Americans to work in the military, which, depending on what you're doing in the military, is much less pleasant than picking strawberries at 4 o'clock in the morning. So if we can get people to literally get shot at for like not very much money in random Middle Eastern countries, I don't really see how we can't get them to pick vegetables, right?
Well, to me, that's a lot different. A lot of those people sign up out of wanting to serve their country and a duty. It's not, oh, they're willing to do a hard job. Maybe there's no other opportunities in their community and it's a way out. I mean, you can get your college paid for and you become a part of something and have some purpose in your life. So I think it's a little more than just like hard work, why people sign up for the military. But my point is, we're not going to produce Americans to do what these laborers do. It's just not possible. It's never going to happen. There's no strategy you could lay out in front of me right now to produce enough kids to get Americans to do those jobs so that we don't need to take advantage of that huge advantage of people wanting to come here and work for and start over. I just see it as a huge L to ignore this competitive advantage that we have, that people come here. I mean, other countries would love to have what we have when it comes to this.
Other countries would love to have millions of random immigrants showing up?
Absolutely.
Like what countries?
Look at China. Their population is falling dramatically.
Yeah, and they don't take in nearly the amount of immigrants that we do. China's a perfect example. China would prefer to have a falling population and all of the terrible things that come along with that. They would prefer to suffer through that as opposed to just essentially importing a bunch of random people from different cultures that don't have their same values. Right. Well, China's a perfect example. If China wanted the level of immigration that we have, they could easily get it. It would not be difficult for them in any way.
Well, I think that they're missing out, and it's a huge mistake that they're doing there. And they tried to get their population to have more people too, and it's not working. So my point is it's a huge advantage for us. And we should take advantage of it by allowing more of them in legally. That's what we should do. China should do that too if they were smart. But their population is going to be cut in half by the turn of the century.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the reason that China is so effective at doing, especially when it comes to like infrastructure projects, when it comes to, you know, social change and stuff like that, when it comes like, for example, like combating like COVID-19 when that was a thing, right? The reason that China was so devastatingly effective at doing those things is because by and large, the Chinese populace is on the same page as far as what's right and what's wrong and like doing things for the greater collective in a way that Americans are not, like at all. Right?
Well, but that's like forced on them by the government. You know, they don't live in a democracy like we do, where they have liberty and freedom. But I want to go back to your point, because you actually mentioned strategy, and your first step was to ban AB. But they've essentially done that in states like Texas for like 2 years now, and what we saw is a drop of like 10% in ABs there. People still are going to find a way to do it.
Well, yeah, because if it's legal in some states and illegal in others, as common sense would have it, people from states where it's illegal who want to get one will just go somewhere where it's legal, right?
Yes, but I mean, there's no path to getting it banned outright in America. It's not going to happen.
Sure you can.
Really? How?
The same way we make other things federally illegal.
But that would take 60 votes in the Senate, or getting rid of the filibuster to do that. Republicans aren't going to do that. That's not an option anytime soon.
Why couldn't we just make an executive order?
You can't have an executive order to ban AB in America.
Why?
Why? Because it would get overturned in the courts instantly. Courts would say, pass a law if you want to do that.
Yeah. I'm not, it seems like you know more about the like technical side of like getting bills passed and stuff like that. So I'll take your word for that. It's just that like it seems like kind of a defeatist sort of attitude to just say, oh, well, it's there's going to be courts that like overrule and stuff. So let's just forget about that. Like it kind of seems like you kind of have to make a concerted effort to like actually get this done. But like if you actually make that effort, I don't see why it wouldn't happen tomorrow, but like I don't see why in a relatively short period of time, just like we do with plenty of other things that become federal laws, we couldn't ban abortion federally.
But again, I point to the reason why people get an AB, and why not just address that? And you can look at the data, and it shows that if you get affordable child care, if you get federal paid family leave, if you make it more convenient for people to have children by making it more affordable, build more affordable housing, then people will have kids and they won't have ABs.
Are there any countries or like societies anywhere where a AB is legal and people don't have ABs? Because I don't think it exists.
I have no idea. I'm sure it exists.
I don't think it does, man, because it's, if anything,
I'm going to bet like Nordic countries where they hook families up right off the bat to take care of their kids. I'm willing to bet those countries have laws that allow you to have an AB, but people don't due to the help they get from the government.
Well, yeah,
this is what I'm saying, though. But just to take a step back, this would help your argument tremendously if you looked into the data behind why people get ABs and look at the reasoning, who the people are. And I think that would help your argument. If that's truly your goal, I think that's important stuff to look into, right? So it's like, if you want to ban people from coming to this country illegally, then wouldn't it be important to know who these people are and why they're coming? And then maybe there's other solutions to stop them from coming instead of just banning.
Isn't the solution to stopping them from coming just stopping them from coming? Why does there have to be another step to it?
Because there's always going to be a way around that. It is illegal to come into the United States right now without a legal pathway, right? But yet millions of people still did it.
Not since Trump's taken office, not since the border's gotten shut down, not in any way, shape, or form.
The demand has plummeted well before Trump took over. If you look at the Southwest land encounters, by January of this year, when Biden left office, it was down to 60,000 a month from a height of 300,000 back in 2023 when everybody was screaming about it. So Biden already brought it down. And that's mostly, like I said, because of demand due to people coming here for work, and that has subsided greatly.
Didn't Biden just bring it, or didn't Biden start enforcing border policy in like 2024 just to be more appealing to like right-leaning voters who were looking at immigration as a big issue? Because as I understand it, that's the only reason that happened, was because Biden was trying to appeal to right-leaning people to win the election.
Well, election deadlines cause action on both sides, and Biden tried to work with Congress in a bipartisan way first, and that bill failed, if you recall. And so then he signed an executive order to shut down the border, except for people claiming asylum through the CBP One app at the ports of entry, and that brought numbers down as well. So yeah, he took action in an election year, but it was after trying to work with Republicans for years. Well, anyways, I got to keep moving. I got some other people waiting, but I appreciate the conversation. I just think, not trying to give you a hard time, but like, if you truly want to get some of this stuff done, then it's important to know who the people are that you're targeting and why they're doing what they're doing. And you could say, well, what does it matter? I'll just make it illegal and it won't happen anymore. It's still going to happen. They're going to find a way.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the conversation, man. You've been reasonable, and I'll probably call back sometime.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, man. Later.